Well, we met. It was the end of finals week in June. It was June 9th, 1955. So this is 66 years that we've known each other. Anyway, the temperature that day was very unusual. It was 98 degrees, and one of the fun things about it is each year when June 9th comes around, it's never been topped. So we can always look in the paper and see that June 9th was 98 degrees. It was hot in many ways. Anyway, I was done with, it was Thursday, a final week, and some of us were done, and so it was such a nice day, I decided to take my father's sailboat, the Tola, out for a sail, and I found three other guys that were done with their finals and wanted to go along, and they said, well, look, we're going, why don't we bring some girls along? So each of them were going with a girl in Marie's sorority, and I didn't know any girls down there particularly. And they said, well, we'll just have them bring along another one, just so there'd be four girls. So that was fine. So anyway, we go down, we get aboard the boat, and I'm busy. I mean, I've got to start the motor and get everything going. I didn't pay attention to who was on board particularly. And we backed up, and then we went through the bridge, and that opened, so the mast could go through and then closed behind us. So about that time, I turned the helm over to someone else, and I went forward to put the jib on the forestay that comes down. The forward sail is a jib, and so I fixed it up, and I turned around to go back, and there was a girl sitting on the hatch right in front of me, and I kind of knew who the other guys were going with, but I didn't know this girl. So I figured, that's probably the one I'm supposed to go with, thing like that today. So anyway, I've introduced myself to someone named Marie, and she was very pleasant, said hello, and then it went back to get back a hold of the helm, and because these guys didn't know a whole lot about sailboats. So we went on the lake, and a beautiful day, and then the wind was out of the east. It seldom is ever out of the east. It's usually either north or south, so you're either beating into the wind or you're running with it. Well, with the wind blowing out of the east, you could just sail up the lake and then turn around and sail back down, and it was such a beautiful day. And we stopped and got a little beer, as college kids will do, And I don't know, and she was back in the cockpit by then, and we, people were talking, but she seemed to be so much fun, and she was, and I started talking to her, and she was just a lot of fun to talk to, and everyone seemed to like her, and I was getting to like her more by the minute. And so finally, after we got done sailing that day,
Oh, we even swam off the boat that day.
we went, I think we did. We stopped and put the sails down and went swimming off the boat, even though this is June, so maybe it's high 98 degrees, but it was pretty cold in the water still. But anyway, finally we, ended at about 3 or 4 o'clock because that night our fraternity had chartered this really big sailboat. I mean, like 120 feet long for the whole fraternity to come on. Those that could, but you were supposed to, you could come alone or invite somebody. So by this time I was thinking, well, I like her quite a bit. I think I'll invite her to go on the sailboat thing, and she said yes. So anyway, so so she went back to her sorority, and she'll tell you a little about that. And I went back to the fraternity, and then I think I picked her up and then drove her down to and we went on board. And that evening, the wind had died down. They didn't try to sail. They had huge, heavy sails and things like that. So the boat just motored up and down the lake, and she was sitting on the front hatch, and I was up there next to her. And I don't know why, but I just decided, I think I'll just lean down and kiss her. So I leaned down and kissed her, and she didn't slap me or anything. So I figured, well, you got, hey, it's not so bad so far. So anyway, then after that we went out riding a little bit, and out to Golden Gardens, and enjoyed each other's company out there. And then I decided that she really ought to meet my folks, because by this time I decided to marry her. So, or at least I thought, well, this is someone I really, really, really like. And so this is 10 o'clock at night. My parents had gone to bed. So I take her out there.
I am mortified.
And we go into my mother and dad's bedroom. My mother, fortunately, was still awake, and my father was off sleeping. And he never met her then. But anyway, I introduced her to my mother and so on, and told her about the great day we had. And then we left. I took her back to the sorority, and she left the next day to go over to back home to Moses Lake, where folks lived at that time. But that was it was a beautiful, wonderful day, and one I'll never forget. So
That was a wonderful day when we met. I thought he was very nice, very much a gentleman, handsome. But when I came back to the sorority in the afternoon, one of my sorority sisters said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Well, I've just met this fellow, and I'm going out on the sailboat tonight." And they said, "Well, what do you know about?" I said, "There's just one thing I'm not sure of. Am I taller than he is?" Anyway, it was wonderful, other than the fact of being mortified to go to somebody's house in the middle of the night. But it was wonderful. It really was. And we still celebrate June 9th.
I went over to see you that summer, didn't I?
Oh, yes. He came over twice that summer. My father opened the Boeing plant in Moses Lake and closed it down 8 years later. But they lived there, and so Chuck called. I'd only known him 24 hours, and he came a couple times to visit, and that was fun. And my family loved him right away, of course. And then
I love them right away.
And then through those couple of years that my parents lived there, he would come over, and then I would drive back to school with him. So in September of that year, when I went back to school, which I mentioned, that he called to see if I could go out. So we had gone out 2 months, and we studied together at the Med Library, and then we would often go over to the yacht club. And we were there, and he asked me if I would wear his fraternity pin. And I said
It was a bit
no.
early. In those days, that was kind of a pre-engagement. It definitely meant you were going to go out steady with this person. And
I said no, so he put it back in his pocket. And then we continued to date, and it was the following April that he asked me again. And I did say yes. And the joke of the family is I turned the pin over, and he'd had it engraved for the first day that he asked me. So it was engraved for
that's
October.
quite a shot. I didn't believe she said no to me the first time.